Okay, so we're looking into these numbers. So these numbers are as shown in here, and we need to paste them into our spreadsheet, into this spreadsheet, which is shown here. So look, for today, so today we are on the 31st of March, right? Now, we need to look into this report, which is shown on the screen, and we need manually to put these numbers into the spreadsheet. And again, we'll talk next week about how to automate extraction of those numbers from the PDF file using data science techniques. But essentially, that's what we see here. That I show on the screen right now. There were in total 1,000,000.9 cases, and we are putting these cases right here. So I'm highlighting it right here, right? So you can see it. And we put all these numbers, for example, how many deaths happened. That's how many deaths happened, 15,000. And we put them right in here. So you see in deaths. And then we put total for hospitalizations and for cases. And then what is most important, we look into the difference in total. And look at the formula, it's shown right here. So what this formula is doing, it is taking the difference between 3 weeks, and then the time. We have 3 weeks of, actually it is shown right here. So you see, that's the formula. So it computes the difference between 3 reports, divides by number of days, multiplies by 7. So we get the average weekly rate. And that's how we get the percentage, or how we get the number of weekly average number of deaths in the last 3 weeks. So it's 137 of deaths total. How many of these were fully vaccinated using the same technique? 112. And this gives us, when we divide one by the other, it gives us 83%. So this is quite simple. And of course, you see that the numbers are much larger than what is reported here, because this 26.9 is the number which they report in here. So in the official report, that's how they report it. They reported 16.9 plus 10, and gives you 26. And of course, you still see that this number goes up. It goes up, up, and up every week. Now, I'll switch now to the PowerPoint presentation to show you a little bit of a history, and then we'll start a discussion about what actually those numbers mean, and in fact, do they show anything? Probably they do show, of course, something useful, and 83% is larger than 26%, so it already gives you a more realistic sense of actually what is happening right now in the last 3 weeks. Now we can compute, of course, some other statistics here. For example, how many cases resulted in deaths for unvaccinated and then fully vaccinated. And this is, for example, where we do see that people who are fully vaccinated, having 2 doses or more, only 0.5% of these people who got infected, or I would say reported, because probably some cases are not reported, right? But of those cases which are reported, only 0.5% resulted in deaths for fully vaccinated, and you will see actually 4 times more this particular week for unvaccinated. Last week or in the previous weeks, actually, it was just 1%. And so you do see that the chance of complications from once you are infected with COVID, it looks like indeed, if you're fully vaccinated, you have 2 times or 4 times less risk of dying if you're already infected, right? Now, what is more interesting, and we mentioned this result last week, that for fully vaccinated with the booster, it's actually more than 0.5. It's 0.9, which is last week was almost the same as for vaccinated, for unvaccinated. Sorry. So now you see we have different information here. So Now, let me go back into the actual presentation slides, and we'll just go one by one through some of those topics. First, also, I would like to mention again that I'm trying to make it simple, transparent. No one should feel fearful of saying anything, I believe. I do appreciate any comments, even the more negative in some sense, or the more critical, the better, because it does allow me to think more thoroughly, and we'll talk about some of those comments which I have specifically received today. And thank you very much again for those who provided those comments. So all the analysis, you will find it in this website, which I've shown you last time, and it does show the same interactive. Now it's interactive, so you can, with your cursor, you can go around on top of the image and see the actual numbers, and it shows some observations which are obtained from those graphs. Then also we have those slide decks which were prepared and shared. I've put all of them into this portal also, and you can just find the presentation from last week, from 2 months ago, and today's presentation is also there. So please go there. It's a very simple URL. As you would see, idim.ca/data/LL. And you will see this PowerPoint presentation here. And the other slide is the page which shows you all the sources which we're processing, and the link to the dashboard. This dashboard which we're analyzing right now. So it's /data. So as always, I would make a disclaimer that we're not representing or reflecting the views of any Canadian agency, university, department, and this are done on our own time and with our own resources. These are the sources which we discussed, and I already mentioned that we have a portal created where you would be able to go and play with this data yourself. And also we developed an app which allows you to track death causes over time. So a little recap from what we have discussed last week. We've compared number of deaths from COVID, which are shown in orange, and these are data from United States. Sorry, not from United States, from United Kingdom, provided by Jason Moffat. And then the number of deaths weekly, again, count of deaths from vaccine. And then we showed the data from our own Canadian data, which also has statistics on deaths and statistics on serious adverse reactions. And we have made the point that, unfortunately, some of those serious adverse reactions are of children younger than 20 years of age, when we do know there were no complications from COVID for this younger population. So vaccines for younger population, in fact, is already statistically, since they started vaccinating children, we have more casualties or health problems caused by vaccine rather than from COVID. We made this point, but we also described the technique which you can use yourself. Very simple technique on how you can compute weekly count from those PDF files, right? And I just have shown you how you would paste those numbers from PDF and put it into spreadsheet. Now, we also made the comment here that the actual number of deaths from COVID is actually less than what is called COVID deaths. Because you remember that our app, which shows you COVID deaths and actually all statistics, they report COVID deaths, but how do they define COVID deaths? This is very important. And I didn't know that myself, except that I started asking myself this question. In fact, not even myself, but my other colleagues from University of Ottawa and Dalhousie, who were writing with me our first comment for the Lancet journal back in December. Then when we looked at these data, which shows COVID, we have seen that indeed other causes of death were going down And it was kind of strange, like why would accidents go down? But then again, our colleagues from United Kingdom, they provided us actually a reference from United Kingdom official website, which tells you exactly how COVID deaths are defined. So, and that was one of the questions the audience has asked us last time. Where did we find how COVID deaths are defined? So the answer is right here. It's pasted from this website. This is the definition of COVID deaths from August 2020. It includes also deaths where patient died within equal to or less than 24 days of testing positive, right? So if you died, let's say from Alzheimer, but you had COVID positive test, looks like according to this definition, you will be filed as not died of Alzheimer, but died of COVID. And this is actually what apparently is happening right here. If you select Alzheimer, and then you select, again, I just kept showing this figure. So this is Alzheimer, and we can average it over 3 weeks. I'm just showing you, we can put it, instead of per million, we can put actual numbers here, and you would see it just started going down. And the same with other causes of death as well, right? So, but it was only recently, again, thanks to our colleagues, data scientists, who actually, they retired from their job, like they're, indeed, they probably have more time to do that than myself, but they looked into the data themselves, both United Kingdom data and data from United States, and they have, indeed, they saw that only a small percentage of all COVID deaths are deaths from COVID. Now, we don't know how much, what is this factor, but I suggested we put like a factor between 2 and 10, based on the data we see from United Kingdom and United States. So essentially all those deaths which are reported in that spreadsheet, you should divide them by 2 or by 10. Okay, so the other question which was asked then, which was answered, okay, well, really, for which population, and how can we justify that the complications from COVID vaccine exceed the number of complications from COVID? And the presentation, PowerPoint presentation, is on the portal, and in fact, transcript will be added there as well, and the actual video is available on YouTube. So because again, it's with what is called glasnost, which is a concept from Soviet Union, which I learned when I was a student. Only from glasnost, which means transparency, you can start rebuilding historically maybe something which was not as good, you can improve it. So, by the way, that's another disclaimer that I'm not a typical Canadian in some sense. I live in Canada since '95, but I came from Canada, from Kyiv. I was born and raised in Kyiv, Ukraine, and I got my master from Moscow Institute of Physics and Technology. So you see, in fact, I'm kind of from a different background. And one of the lessons I learned back from Soviet Union, that anytime you listen news, especially on TV or radio, back in those Soviet times, you would understand two things. You will understand something about the object, but also about the subject. Object is what they're telling you about, and subject is the actual media channel and how they want you to think about this subject. So, and this is essentially what seems to be what the same technique which we could use here as well as we analyze this data. Because when you see that PHAT has reported in their original report much smaller numbers, and I'm showing you, this were the numbers which were reported back in August. You know, they were showing 2% or 3% of deaths in here instead of 1323, right? So you see, you'll learn something about the object, but also about the subject. And the subject in this case seems like it's government of Canada, and maybe then other mainstream channels which were essentially repeating the same information here. They did talk about chances of complication, and again, we have all this information. But here, instead of showing the actual numbers, and they still, by the way, still they don't show weekly numbers. which we're talking about, they still show the numbers which are with this advantage of deaths which happened before fully vaccinated were actually in Canada. And the next slide shows you exactly that. So and we talked about that quite a few times, this is their first report on July the 10th. And it counted about 600,000 cases of deaths. Now, these are all those deaths which came with vaccination status. And it seems to be like about only 50% of cases come from with the vaccination status information. The other are probably not coming with vaccination status information, and that's absolutely fine. But what we now know by looking into this app, which I've shown you already a couple of times here, and you can add in here show vaccination rates, and it's live, and you can look into the tables, and you can look in cumulative data, and you can look only for COVID, and I'm showing it right now, and you can see exactly how many COVID cases there were before we got fully vaccination. So I'm doing it live right now with you in here, just sorting by date, and you would see some numbers in here, but you can do it yourself offline. But here I just show you there were that many deaths of COVID. Look, before this report was published, right? So you can imagine how big was advantage. So by that time, there were only 10% of fully vaccinated, and there were 0 fully vaccinated as of January the 4th, because this is 2 weeks after the first shot. And you remember, even according to PHAC, these are considered to be not protected, not yet protected. That's how they call it. So they were not yet protected before that time. So you can compute all those numbers. Now I see there are only maybe 5 minutes left. So I would like just to get back now to the discussion, which or comment which I have received, which is again very good comment, that we do need to look into the all population, just holistically into the entire population of Canada, how many people are vaccinated, not vaccinated, and I have included this information right here. So these are the numbers. We'll look into the vaccination rate in January, and it was again, it was published. We put it as a white paper, and it's available on the portal. So, but the comment is the following: that if we look at the entire number of Canadians, so we see population size in each category of not vaccinated, category fully vaccinated, and then we really compute the percentage, like rates relative to population size. And then we do see, when we then divide by one another, that for example, 0 dose over 1 dose, you see indeed twice as many, there will be twice as many hospitalizations if you don't have any shot, and 3 times more. And similarly, you can compute it for, let's say, 1 dose over 2 doses. And this is already very interesting, that you see that actually adding the second dose seems like it reduces the, or it's not reduces, it increases the risk of deaths, right? So I'm using the same methodology. And again, thank you individuals who provided this and that, because now I've added this into spreadsheet. It's now live. We can play with different data. All formulas are here. The spreadsheet is available on the portal where I've shown you. And you can see, yes, indeed, for people who are twice vaccinated, or who have more exactly 2 doses, they're 2.3 times less to die of COVID compared to those who don't have any shot. So these are the numbers. Again, seems like we have a good discussion, and that's exactly what we would like to get out of this type of weekly seminars, which we have here. Now, again, please ask questions. You can send me by email. Again, we can keep it confidential, and I will try to address as many questions as possible. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to show, because this is now we put all those numbers, and indeed we do see that the number of people who are dying now of COVID in the last 3 weeks. In fact, there unfortunately are those who have 2 doses or more. So again, I'm just checking if you have anyone have any questions. Otherwise, I thank everyone who has joined us today. Let's keep this opportunity open. Let's not feel intimidated to ask questions or be critical of anyone, because it's only through the criticism that we're able to get more knowledge from these official data. Now, let me see what else I have prepared here. So that's the comment which was submitted. Actually, this one was not submitted. We just made a public white paper, just put on the portal, which where we for the first time we noted that there is this algorithmic bias. Then what else? We have daily epidemiology update. Everyone now can do this computation yourself. Just go there and look there. Another important message which we made is that young people, again, they do not die of COVID. So, and we have shown it here as well. Okay, perhaps you already mentioned this, and I missed it, but do you have the Canadian numbers of those dying with COVID versus off COVID? Now, this information is not available in Canada, but it is available in United Kingdom. So look for John Campbell YouTube channel. He has a specific episode where this information was retrieved through the Freedom of Information request. So this information is available from Office of National Statistics in the United Kingdom, and it shows that about only 10–15% of all COVID deaths are COVID alone. And in fact, the average age of people who die of COVID is pretty much the same as life expectancy, which is consistent with what we see now on my screen, where I show you the number of cases deceased in Canada from COVID by age. And you would see, very, very important, that for young children, actually, it's really it's zero, because they count since the beginning of pandemic. So for more than 2 years, they're counting, and they counted how many? 25. These are all COVID deaths. Even people, again, children sometimes unfortunately die from other reasons, but if they were within 24 days diagnosed with COVID, looks like they could have been classified as COVID deaths. But you can again compare easily this number in this report today with the report last week, and you would see that this number 25 has not changed for half a year already. So indeed, these people or children under 20 years of age just do not die of COVID. But now you can go back into the safety, vaccine safety, and you would see that actually there are already more than 100 children who have severe adverse events like liver failure, heart failure, some deaths. But again, it takes more than 6 months to actually to establish the link in many cases. So there is a delay, which again is a bias. It's algorithmic bias, and we understand it's not something we can do much about, right? You just have to wait for 1 year or so, maybe, until you get more information about those side effects. And this is why only now we can compare really side effects from vaccines, those in summer, right? Because only now we're getting this information. So in the spreadsheet, we have this number of plots plotted here, and I'm showing you in here as well. These are plots from severe adverse reactions. This is the graph which is shown from May, and it shows just very few adverse reactions, serious adverse reactions, like less than 20. But then if you look at the same month of May, now from February, you would see there are twice as many. And this number for the same month of May is actually going larger again every week, pretty much. So again, thank you very much. I'm looking if there are any more comments. Please make use again of this opportunity. We are all here to make ourselves, to help each other. Let's put it this way: to help each other and to help anyone else